Can Ukraine outright win a conventional war, or will it have to be by underground resistance? Joining me now to discuss that and more is Admiral William McRaven. He was a Navy SEAL for 37 years, rising to the commander of all U.S. Special Operations Forces, including the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. Admiral, good to see you again. Thank you so much for being here. There's a lot to discuss, and let me begin with this. President Zelensky last night said that NATO was, quote, weak and lost for not imposing a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Is he right?
Hey, thanks, Michael. It's good to be with you. Well, one, NATO has been providing a lot of support. They've been providing financial support. They've been providing lethal aid. You see the NATO countries accepting the refugees as they're coming across the border. So I understand President Zelensky's concern. Of course, from the Biden administration standpoint, I think, from NATO's standpoint, if you impose a no-fly zone, then there is the potential to expand the fight rather than to contain it. So while, I can appreciate President Zelensky's difficult position, I think for now, not imposing a no-fly zone is probably the right way to go.
Can Ukraine outright win this war?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how you define win. The fact of the matter is, from a conventional standpoint, the Russians clearly have overmatched the Ukrainians in terms of pure combat power. But winning means, if you define winning as can they kind of take over and subjugate the Ukrainian people, I don't see that happening. The Ukrainian people are standing tall. They are fighting hard. As the Russians begin to move into Kyiv and Kharkiv, they're going to find themselves in an urban combat environment. And the urban environment is going to favor the Ukrainians because, they know the alleyways, they know the buildings, they know the streets. You'll be channeling conventional forces. And at the end of the day, the question for the Russians is, can they sustain the morale of the troops? Can they sustain the willpower of the Russian people in order to continue this fight? That remains to be seen. And I would say right now, the longer this fight goes, the better chance the Ukrainians have of winning it.
Do the Ukrainians have the ammunition? Do they have the manpower that they require?
Yeah, again, if you're talking conventional force on force, the answer is probably no. But if you're talking about a long partisan guerrilla insurgency, I think the answer is yes. Because you're going to find, again, we talked about NATO earlier, NATO is going to continue to provide the lethal aid necessary for, I think, the insurgent force, the guerrilla warfare that will continue on after the conventional fight has subdued a little bit. And that, I think they will have the ability to continue the fight. And this is going to be very, very difficult for the Russians.
Admiral, hearing you so far, it sounds to me like your assessment is that this is Afghanistan on steroids for the Russians.
Yeah, I think it remains to be seen. Obviously, Ukraine is not Afghanistan, and so I want to be careful about those analogies. But I think where you do see a bit of an analogy is the fact that the Russians can very quickly get bogged down in Ukraine because of the will of the Ukrainian people, because of the willingness of NATO to kind of support the Ukrainians, to provide them lethal aid, to provide them funding, provide them avenues in order to continue to fight. So it is going to be exceedingly difficult for the Russians once they, close in on Kyiv and Kharkiv and the other major urban areas, because once they get into an urban fight, again, I think the fight favors the Ukrainians.
Admiral, I've been reading about the dispatch of these so-called death squads who reportedly have been given assignment of trying to take out Zelensky. My question for you, is it necessarily in Putin's best interest to try and take out Zelensky?
Yeah, absolutely not. One, President Zelensky has shown remarkable courage, remarkable stamina. I mean, he really is a shining example for all Ukrainians and, frankly, for the world right now. But if you take out Zelensky, you're going to make him a martyr. And I think you're going to find the Ukrainian people will fight even harder if they lose their president, particularly this remarkable man that's standing up in the face of Russian aggression.
A year ago, you said the following. You said, I am often asked, where do I think the greatest external security threat is? And I always point to Russia. At that time, you also said of Putin that he had outplayed us. How had he outplayed us, and is he outplaying us now?
Yeah, well, to answer your question, he is absolutely not outplaying us now. And this is it's interesting. When you go back and you take a look at how Putin has kind of played the game, the great game, as we call it, on the world stage, I would say he kind of outmaneuvered the world in Crimea and the Ukraine. and in Syria and to some degree in Venezuela. And when I say outmaneuvered, he has always ended up in a better strategic position as far as Putin was concerned. But he is going to lose this war no matter how it unfolds, because he has become an international pariah. He's got these withering economic sanctions that are being forced upon the Russian people. He's finding that the Russian people don't really support this war. The Ukrainians are prepared to fight, and he's made NATO stronger. So no matter how this war ends, and I hope it certainly ends quickly and in the favor of the Ukrainians, but no matter how it ends, Putin is lost. I don't see him continuing to be an effective leader in Russia once this is over.
Admiral, I'm sure that during the course of your long, nearly 4-decade distinguished career that you've been briefed on his profile and personality. Yeah. I'm not going to ask you for any insights in that regard, but I do want to ask this. Have you noted changes in what you're seeing from a distance of Vladimir Putin?
Yeah, I would have told you before this unfolded that Putin, while sometimes reckless, was always a rational actor in the classic kind of political science vernacular. That he did things that, once again, he could see a strategic outcome that would favor him and Russia. Now, you have to wonder two things. One is he's still a rational actor because there was nothing about this maneuver to take Kyiv and to try to subjugate the Ukrainian people that seemed to me to be rational. Or did he just miscalculate? Did he really think that they were going to be throwing rose petals at his feet as the Russian soldiers came in? So I think it's really a little too hard to tell right now whether or not he is truly imbalanced because he has been, alone for 2 years. He's been living in an echo chamber, or whether he just fundamentally miscalculated. The problem is, if in fact he is no longer a rational actor, this makes it very difficult for NATO and for the U.S. to try to judge and to figure out what his next moves might be. And this is why, back to your first question about the no-fly zone, we have to be very cautious about not putting Putin in a position any further than he already is, where he fights like a trapped animal and does things that are even more egregious than what he's doing now.
Final question. Can you envision a scenario in the future where ever again Vladimir Putin meets face-to-face with an American president?
I certainly can't envision it right now, Michael. As I said, he's become an international pariah. And I can't imagine anybody, any world leader, meeting with him unless it is to negotiate his departure from Russia. So I don't see it happening with an American president, certainly no time in the near or even mid to distant future.
Thank you for allowing me to cover so much ground in a relatively short period of time. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Michael.